Hello, everyone. Just gonna give a few minutes to everyone, allow all attendees to come in. Not everyone will have finished their calls. Not everyone will have finished their lunches right on time. So we'll give it a few minutes. I'm super excited about this webinar. It's been one in the works for some time. I love that we have 4 parties involved. We generally do podcasts of 2 parties. This is 4 parties, and one of my favorite pieces is essentially that we have merchant in the space with real life experience of going headless and what that journey looks like. So I think it'll provide the audience a lot of value to hear a little bit more. So while we wait, I'll get a quick poll started. This is for all attendees. Feel free to pitch in. And essentially, I'll share the answers if it makes sense after. I'll either share the percentage values or the actual counts of numbers. But I think this will be a good way to get us started. And then once we're kind of done the poll, we'll get the panelists introduced. How's everyone doing today, though? Everyone okay?
I could chime in. I'm doing okay.
Awesome.
Doing very well, thanks.
Enjoy the summer weather here in England. So it's a bit brisky.
Usual summer weather.
It's actually all right for April. I can't complain. I'm not brave enough to go to the beach at this weather, but nonetheless, I can't complain.
Yeah, I think everywhere is a little bit warmer than in past years. Global warming potentially, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been seeing as a trend.
Yeah, let's not go down that route, maybe. I can't actually see anyone. I don't know if it's just me. I've probably pressed the button or something, but I can just see the poll.
It might be just because of the poll. So once that poll is closed, yeah, we'll get that back up. I'll give it another minute just to give people enough time to answer the poll, enough time to come in, and we'll get going. The first section will just be intro, so we can keep it light till some more people chime in and hop in, and then we'll go from there. So some interesting answers. As of now, I'm seeing 64% maybe, 27% as a no, and 9% as a yes. I don't want to close it just quite yet. I'll give it a little bit more, but essentially I'll make the results live once everyone is chimed in. So yes is growing a little bit, so 17% now, no is 25%, and the maybes are 58%. This is going to be an interesting one. I think I'll close it off there. I'll share the results just so we can see. So are you planning to implement a headless solution in the next 12 months? The yeses are 17%, the no's 25%, and maybe 58%. So this will all be recorded, by the way. We have this call recorded, so you'll be able to watch it after, and registrants will receive the link as well. So I'll hide this for now, just so we can show our panelists, and I'll kind of let them all intro themselves. Maybe top left on my screen anyway, and I thought to give the merchant a chance first. Brendan, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Lovely. So we are Pitman. We're stockists, distributors of traffic and safety equipment. We have 2 websites, one serving the UK market and one serving the Irish market. Our main customers are local authorities, warehouse sector, and the construction sector. Our best sellers include bollards, barriers, bicycle storage, even speed bumps. Over the past couple of years, we've added street furniture to our range as well, so that makes it slightly more exciting. Benches, bins, planters, everything to kind of make public spaces more accessible, more friendly. That's us.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Thanks, Brendan. Philip, I see you next in order on my webcam list, so go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Philip, founder and CEO of Styla. We are a no-code digital experience software as a service. So we've been around since 2012. Started off with a shoppable magazine technology in which merchants could easily install a super nice looking magazine feed on their website. That turned into a complete full-fledged CMS solution. And now as of 2022, we launched our headless storefront solution. That is, the reason I guess why I'm here and why we can talk together about the benefits and the maybe questions around headless. We are quite excited because we see a lot of opportunity in the space. Happy to share my thoughts on it.
Same here. Thanks for sharing. Alex, I'll let you go first, and then Luigi can close it off after you, and then we'll move on to some of the topics.
Let's do it. So hey everyone, Alex DeFusto. I am the UK sales manager at BigCommerce. So we're ultimately an e-commerce platform. Two things we really achieve: help merchants achieve the choice of front-end technology, no matter who that's on, front-end experience, and how they decide to sell online being their choice. So we help that openness and that flexibility. And point two is the bit which is a bit harder, to be honest with you, which is just to make it easy for people to do point one. So they're really the two things. We've got some great brands we're proud of working with. Pitman being one, our favorite, so we'll always say that as number one, it goes without saying. And then obviously you've got your, let's say, Ted Baker's, Procter & Gamble's, Nokia's, Brompton Bikes, people like that are chosen to guide us down that path as well. So looking forward to the chat later.
That's awesome. I love that. Luigi, if you can give our take, and then we'll go from there.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are. My name is Luigi. I'm the founder of Calashock. We're a specialist BigCommerce systems integrator. We're also partners with Styla, and we're also the SI agency working with Brendan at Pitman.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Pleasure to have you all. First topic I want to get into, very close to the topic of the webinar, but what is headless and PWAs, or progressive web apps? So I'll start with just a question to get things going. We want to definitely keep it conversational and kind of give and take, so everyone will be pitching in. But what is headless commerce, Luigi?
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. So fundamentally, headless, because this is an area that can start getting quite grey depending on the use case and depending who you speak to. But fundamentally, headless is where you decouple, you detach the back end of a website. So it's the control panel, whether in this case is obviously BigCommerce, so where you go in to manage your products, your orders, customers, payment methods, and the front end, which is your presentation layer. So what you actually see on the browser. BigCommerce as a platform itself, you can get online very reasonably quickly by obviously signing up, putting in your information, customizing the front end, and you're online. And that's kind of traditionally where monolithic platforms have worked. So BigCommerce and other e-com platforms and CMSs as well. But where then headless comes in is that you've got merchants that are looking for maybe additional functionality, or in this case where we work very closely with Styla, is where they need to incorporate a PWA. So if you're a merchant looking for a PWA, which is a progressive web app, it's a hybrid between a kind of a really mobile optimized website and a native app, kind of sits in the middle. If that, for example, is one of your requirements, and we'll delve into why someone might want to go into PWA, then you've got two choices. You can either build something custom or you go headless. And in this case, it makes sense for the majority of merchants to consider going headless, because you've basically still got the benefit of the e-commerce platform powering your e-commerce functionality. You've got all the security, all the safety and all the functionality, but actually you've got a lot more freedom on the front end. But I think oftentimes headless is sometimes missold in an industry, because a lot of platforms think that they can do what's known as headless. And I think one of the objectives of this webinar is to really make people understand that headless is something that should be considered, but it's actually something that needs to be done in the proper way. It's not something that you can kind of patch together. And one of the reasons why we've been very successful working on headless implementations with BigCommerce is because they sit in the middle of this kind of open SaaS approach. So we've not just got a feature-rich e-commerce platform that we leverage, but actually, in order to go kind of headless, you really need strong APIs, because the data that's transferred between the front end to the back end works off APIs. And if your APIs are slow, if they're throttling, if they're really restricted, that's going to reflect on your front end. So kind of just to close it off, headless is decoupling the back end and the front end, but it's really important that kind of that middle piece, those connections are really scoped out well and powerful enough to be able to support a headless implementation.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's where some of BigCommerce's API limits come in. I know that's a big factor, but Philip as well, can you kind of pitch in on Styla and their relation to PWAs and how you help in that sphere?
Sure, of course. So as Luigi said, PWA is something that is a major benefit of a headless setup. It is possible to create a PWA as well if you're not headless, but the benefit of having the backend distinct from the front end allows for an easier and faster integration of a PWA. And a PWA basically is a mobile website that looks and behaves as if it is a mobile app. And if we think back of the days where we all ran into the development of mobile apps, we spent I don't know, upper 5-digit or 6-digit amounts for something that people would have to install from the App Store, like Apple App Store, for example, install it on the phone. And as studies said, 99% of the users would never open it ever again. So that's pretty crazy. So you can see that it's sort of a gated space in which you put a lot of money, and it is not really living up to any of the wishes. And a mobile website, though, has a couple of deficiencies as well, because, for example, you can't have access to the device's features, to the hardware, and it's a little slower. And there's a couple of things that don't really work out on a mobile website. And so a couple of guys came up with a term progressive web app, PWA. I think it was someone from Google. And they said, why do we have to download an app once in a big package from an app store? Why don't we just download it progressively from the web while someone is surfing on it? And this is a completely phenomenal approach to how an app can be downloaded. And that's what keeps the app open. That means anyone can just use the mobile website. They go to the mobile version and they instinctively download the app in the background and have the same feature scope, the same access to hardware functionality, et cetera, as if they had a normal app. And this way, also they can share links from the app. And also one important factor is that Google can then read everything that's inside the PWA. And therefore, PWA is always a big booster for SEO as well. And so it seems like it's the best of both worlds coming together here. And that's why we're a strong, we see PWA working just very well for our customers.
Yeah. If I could just add in there, sorry to interrupt, but one of the other things that I hear from merchants that have apps is the maintenance of them. When you're looking at a native app, like you're constantly maintaining that app, and it costs you time and it costs you money. So that's another benefit that we kind of, when we're speaking to merchants, have, is that they don't have to worry about maintaining an app that maybe is not really growing or is just necessary part of their business structure.
And also, Luigi, to add on that, obviously you don't just write an app for the iOS platform, you also need an Android one. So you have already 2 platforms at least that need to be maintained ongoingly. So it's quite a lot of costs that you're carrying with you. Yeah.
So true. Alex, I wanted to get your or BigCommerce's kind of perspective on Headless and how you really fit into that ecosystem and where you can help merchants.
Yeah, sure. So just listening to both Philip and Luigi there, I could resonate a lot, because Luigi mentioned the word monolithic earlier, and it's almost why we seek to exist at BigCommerce, to be honest with you. the problem statement we see is merchants in the modern world have the challenge of, look, they found such an innovative front-end tool, whether that's a PWA, whether that's a CMS, whether that's a conversion optimization tool or shopping, VR shopping, and they want to try that and they want to use it, but when they're on a monolithic platform, it's all tightly woven and an all-in-one, it's very hard for them to say, look, I'm just going to test and learn and try it. It's not, monolithic platforms aren't built for that. So how Headless and how PWA fits into our ecosystem, we as BigCommerce, I'd argue our unique selling point doesn't actually have much to do with us. It's to do with all of our innovative third parties in our ecosystem, like a styler, like some other, really conversion optimized tools. But what we do is be good at exactly what you need us to be, which is a really flexible back-end e-commerce system built for headless. That's not reverse engineered, that's not a monolithic system trying to get into headless. We're built for that. So we allow merchants to be able to choose freely these really cool conversion tools, or experience tools or PWA tools, and rely on what we do is build these integrations as best as we can already. So lots of merchants don't have to go through all that. So we've got over 800 integrations and counting into your stylers and other people, ultimately allow merchants to completely control and have freedom of choice of what tools they use. And that really is the ecosystem. We win, and we're best for merchants when merchants don't want to use an all-in-one and don't want to use, dare I say, BigCommerce for everything. It's use conversion optimization tools that are really going to do the, dare I say, the sexy things and allow us to be the back-end glue, much more flexible and pre-built integrations just to go time to market on them. That's how it fits into our ecosystem. It is our world at the end of the day. We lose if we don't enable the ecosystem of partners.
Agreed. And I found the ecosystem to be, very partner friendly, and I think the community and everyone being really invested in that helps push all of this forward. Absolutely.
Just going back to the poll at the beginning, that we had quite the large majority saying maybe that they'd consider going headless in the next 12 months. So one of the great things that BigCommerce brings to the table, and fair enough, we work exclusively with BigCommerce, so we'll be slightly biased, but it is a monolithic platform that allows you to then go headless and composable further down the line. So it doesn't have this kind of glass ceiling where if out of those attendees you're on BigCommerce already, and you say, well, look, we're going to consider headless, you don't have to now start looking for a new ecom platform and then a headless provider and all these things. You can make that choice retaining your same kind of e-commerce platform. And so that is a really big benefit for us, because when we've got merchants that are on BigCommerce and have seen that growth and then want to add in the additional functionality or flexibility, whatever it is that their needs are, they can still achieve that on BigCommerce. And as Alex said, with the ecosystem of platforms and partners, whether it's kind of quite fundamental like the front end, or maybe some tools that help you enhance the the functionality or the insights and so on, you can achieve that. The APIs are probably the most powerful ones around, like 400 calls a second or something. So from that perspective, we've got like zero concerns when merchants come to us with a massive catalog. The merchants we got in Italy, they've got 650,000 SKUs. Fine, it's not a 2-minute job, but it's not something that's going to start, slowing things down. And I think that's a really important piece to remember, because not all APIs are made equal. And I think, APIs can sometimes be seen as just APIs, but you really need to get under the hood and just say, right, but how powerful are these APIs? How wide are they? What access do I have to the APIs? Styler wouldn't be able to do half things it does without access to the APIs from BigCommerce. So that's a really important piece as well, from an e-commerce platform perspective, that I think is, merchants need to consider, because APIs are going to be the things that make or break a headless project.
Really agree. I think also we decided to go with BigCommerce as well, because we looked at all the APIs out there, and it seemed just like the BigCommerce API is the strongest, no limitations. And obviously, as a front-end player, we live on the API. We can't do anything, as Luigi said, without accessing the API. And it's just really great how BigCommerce works with the API, the whole access, the whole support we get also if there are questions. And so this is all really great. So we're really happy with that.
Awesome. Glad to hear. We'll move on to the next topic. I'll first start with a poll. So let me launch that here. But essentially, we're going to go into a little bit more about why and when should merchants go headless. So question here is, what benefits do you expect from a headless solution? You can select multiple options from this list, but essentially customization and personalization of digital experience is the first one. Performance improvement like speed, system scalability, flexibility and ease of integration, and an omni-channel experience. So I'll give it 30 seconds or so just to see all the responses come in. Super interesting so far. Looks like the first couple are about 77%, and then 15, and then 15 for the bottom one as well, with, I don't know if this is off the percentages, but it's telling me for 71 for flexibility as well. So let me get all the responses in and I'll share. But I think it's because the multi answers are making sure that it doesn't add up to 100. So I'll close that off. I'll share the results, as you can see. So definitely varied. And we can see the first two are big winner with flexibility and ease of integration as well.
If you look at that, I mean, the first one there is very very individual to the merchant. So it comes down to what functionality does the merchant want to have in their website? How do they want to be able to manage that? But the second one there, which is obviously taking up most of the responses there, is down to speed, and that's got two elements to it, doesn't it? The first one is, you know, if you go on a website, you want to make sure that it loads quickly so that your customers, you know, don't drop off and your conversion rate tanks. But secondly, something that's completely out of your control is also how Google and other search engines, you know, kind of perceive your website in terms of its optimization. So I'm not surprised by that it's actually, because I think that's probably one of the most important things, because everything else you could kind of shoehorn, but you can't shoehorn site speed. Like, that's imperative.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll go ahead and hide this for now, but essentially with relation to these results, or let me keep it a second while I ask this question. You know, considering this list, do you have anything to add outside of that in terms of why should merchants use headless and consider PWAs? I know a lot of these will probably be the reasons, but anything to add there?
Is that to?
Yeah, yourself, but anyone can pitch in.
Well, it's gone now, but I think probably one of so from my experience of what we speak when we speak to merchants, there you go, thank you very much. So the first one is kind of when you put yourself in a merchant's perspective, you need to see, right, how can I compete against my competitors and how can I differentiate myself? And you get to a point when you're, you know, if you look at the leading e-commerce platforms that are out there, BigCommerce and its competitors, really the engine's the same. So how you then differentiate yourself is obviously kind of your business, so your product and how you know, how quickly you send out your orders and customer service. But the other one is, what is the function? What's our kind of website experience? What the customer journey like, and how can we customize that? So from that perspective, you know, that's a really important element to start understanding, because if you're on a platform that, you know, is incredibly, you know, is increasingly popular, that they all have the same functionality and features, how can you actually kind of stand out, and how can you kind of start thinking out of the box? And that's where you need to start bringing in these tools that are from, you know, from the outside to be able to achieve those customizations. And what we do with Stylist, so, you know, you can launch with Stylist fairly quickly, kind of without the box functionality, but then we've also got the ability as an agency to start customizing the components. So, you know, we're working with Brendan, and there's Pitman, and there's a lot of kind of elements there that we're building out specifically for Pitman. So we're not, you know, kind of taking a you know, a component for, you know, B2B and just, you know, customizing the colors to Brendan's brand. We are saying this is the functionality, you know, that we've discussed with Brendan that we're going to have in the website, and we're going to build it out specifically Pitman. And we're not talking about building out like a custom app or a custom experience manager. This is something that's kind of, in addition to the out of the box, but doesn't have to break the bank. So it's a really good way for a merchant to start offering differentiators on their customer journey without having to build something custom, from the ground up. So that's really one of the key considerations when you are looking at kind of going headless, is saying, now what can I achieve in the box, but have I got anything that would work much better if I was on something like a PWA or a website that maybe gave me a bit more functionality and flexibility.
Ivan, maybe I could add something to this as well. So Salesforce did a poll, a very similar poll end of last year, when they published that was published in the State of E-commerce. And they asked the merchants what they think of Headless and the benefits of it. And aside of performance, the top two things were flexibility and agility. And this is exactly what we hear from our customers as well. They come to us and say, hey, I have an idea about a journey, a buying journey, and I just can't realize it. How can I make it possible? And all these solutions out there, as Luigi just said, they are so somehow narrow and static in the way that they offer these options to customize the experience, that they have a certain limit and a certain range of possibilities. And this breaks away in a headless infrastructure, because an agency like Kalashok can just go in and on top of Styler, for example, they could just realize whatever they want on top of the APIs that are provided. This is something, and the other thing which is really striking in that study is that over a third of the merchants said that a change on the website, whatever it is, takes weeks or months to realize. So it's really crazy what these overcomplicated systems have as constraints. And that's always what I say, the website is a channel, and the channel for growth, for marketing. It turns out that in most companies, the website is actually a playground more for the IT than for marketing. And we need to shift it back to the marketing team in order to work with it and have it play, because they are the ones who understand the market, who know what needs to be promoted and what needs to go out. And oftentimes, as we see in these results from Salesforce, the monolithic infrastructure is just a gatekeeper for that.
Well, we saw that during COVID, didn't we? Kind of, with a lot of brands had to pivot, and they were on systems that just didn't have the agility. And then when you had brands that were on platforms like BigCommerce that was SaaS, there's merchants that spun up websites in weeks, and it's not kind of just a templated one that they're able to customize, and it's the same with Styler. So I think and now we're in a position in this industry where it is so fast paced that merchants need that agility today to be able to kind of keep up with things, because it's just changing at such an alarming rate. And so that's a really important factor when you're kind of evaluating whether to go headless, and secondly, your headless provider. Because like I said, the great thing about Styler from an agency perspective, while I'm not a developer, all my developers say it's a really good platform to work with because it's so intuitive and easy. And then from a merchant perspective, and obviously we'll be speaking to Brendan later, but it's really easy to manage from that as well. So I think that agility word is a really important one, because maybe it's kind of, we've forgotten about it over the last year or so, but during COVID, that was the buzzword. It was kind of like, had all these independent small brands that were just crushing it because they could spin things up really quickly. And the bigger merchants just didn't have the possibility, because their massive ship took forever to kind of turn. And all these small merchants on speedboats were just, zooming around. But anyway.
Great points. Yeah. Love it all. Alex, wanted to get your opinion. We're kind of chatting about potentially starting a headless project. When is the right time for someone to consider a move to headless?
I think it's almost the buzzword versus reality as well. That's the slight danger with the word headless, right? So you'd be surprised how many first stage conversations we have with a potential, customer, and you ask them why headless. It's almost, you go to the doctor and you're telling them what solution you need to give them, or antidote, instead of explaining, what you actually need, right? And you'd be surprised how many just say, everyone's doing it, and I want I don't know, I want a nice user experience and I'd like it to be personalized, but you know, there's plenty out of the box storefronts, non-headless, that can do all that fine, right? They're not bad solutions, they can do all that. So I think point one is just be really, really clear on what and why you need headless and why the out of the box example won't work, and getting advice from people like Kalashok, who are the experts in it, is probably a very good thing to think about, because you know it's very, very easy to slip into that point. But look, I think that's a really first point, Mike. But if, like the guys mentioned earlier, if you need unique UX, many channels more than just e-com, if your branding team or your content team want to work in isolation and they've got lots of things to do compared to maybe the IT team and the back-end team, and you need that separation, the flexibility, then yeah. But if you're not ticking those boxes, maybe there's an argument to say you're not quite ready for it. So I think that's massive consideration. Then the other consideration is skills and budget. You could do with more people if you're going headless. It's probably going to cost you more upfront if you're going headless. If you meet those requirements earlier that I said, it is absolutely worthwhile and you'll get the return on investment in the sales uplift. But if you don't, they're the considerations I'd probably be calling out. And Luigi, you go through this every day with merchants, I'm sure, right? Is that a fair point?
I think so. I mean, you're right that kind of headless is a bit of a buzzword, composable a bit of a buzzword. And I think it's, you know, in some cases it is justified, but there is no one size fits all. Like we've got big merchants that are not going on headless, and we've got smaller merchants that are going on headless. And so really it is down to, I would always kind of say that my first choice would be to not go headless, but only because that's where you need to start from. Like you say, you need to build up a case, because not only from kind of the development perspective and the functionality, but then headless comes with so many other benefits from a marketing perspective. But like you say, do you have the internal bandwidth to be able to manage that? Because you know, if you're looking at PWA, you know, saving it to your smartphone as a user has so many benefits to it, and Philip is much more qualified to talk about those benefits there. But there's a whole marketing discussion around that. It's not just a technology one anymore. It's leveraging the PWA to kind of improve the relationship that you've got with and the loyalty that you've got with your customer. So it's not something to kind of jump into, but I think if you are considering headless, it's a really good move. You know, it also means, I'd probably say, if you're looking at PWAs, if you've got a PWA strategy, you're probably ahead of the curve. I mean, PWAs have not kind of launched in the last 6 months. They've been around for years, but I still think they're fairly under kind of utilized in the market. They're still not known as widely as they should be. So even there, you know, kind of going headless and with a PWA and having a PWA strategy, you are kind of, you're probably one of the leaders, early adopters, even though the technology has been out for years. On the point around kind of budget, yes, it is, you know, kind of more expensive than going monolith. But I think one of the benefits of something like Styler is that it does make that a lot easier. So, you know, we work with a variety of different headless providers, but the great thing about Styler is it kind of matches that. You know, when we speak to other merchants that maybe are working off a, you know, they're migrating from like a legacy platform to something like BigCommerce, when you speak to them about their initial development and the maintenance that goes into the platform, we have none of those with BigCommerce. And it's the same with Styler. Styler seems to kind of mirror that intuition and kind of ease of management that BigCommerce does. So I think from that perspective, as a provider, Styler's really good fit, because it does serve the smaller merchants that want to get an edge on their competitors, without kind of saying, you know, it's going to be a 6-7 figure, you know, or high 6-figure implementation cost, which I know sounds extraordinarily high, but that, you know, we've spoken to merchants before that have been quoted like over $500,000 for, you know, for a PW implementation somewhere else, and not necessarily for the reasons that, you know, their requirements are so complex. So
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's
also
right.
Want to add to that sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I just wanted to add that the reason why Styler came out with a headless solution also is to sort of take away the fear of going headless. Because usually, and maybe Luigi can talk about this later as well, you would have to choose your hosting structure, CDN, you would have to have the framework for going headless, and then everything has to be stitched together in a lot of agency work. And this may be the right strategy for many out there, but for someone who just wants to have a really strong performing web and mobile strategy in headless and benefit from the performance increase, we said, why don't we just take the hosting CDN infrastructure, a pre-render engine, the PWA, and the Squarespace-like page builder, and just pre-package everything together into one product that people can install from the BigCommerce App Store straight away in a couple of seconds. So this is sort of the idea that we came up with in order to counteract and confront these big, heavy investments with a very simple strategy of going headless. This is what we are really interested about, because we believe that headless right now is a bit like the first car that came out. You know, it was very expensive and very difficult to maneuver, but then it sort of went down the market and became affordable for everyone else. And I think this is what we see in a market that's rapidly developing, and headless is going to sort of democratize, and that's what we want to support. And on top of that, as Luigi said, obviously Calishop can go in and customize into any direction. So that's a way, hopefully, to make it easy for everyone to go headless in the first place, and then take it from there, instead of just waiting and being afraid of adopting a headless strategy, because the benefits are definitely out there.
Totally agree. Thanks for those points. I'll move to the next topic, just so we can get as well some merchant-facing conversation going. The topic is, what does a headless project look like? Luigi, if you can give me a little bit more information, or give us on what a typical headless project looks like. How long does it take? Maybe some costs involved, if you can give listeners some insight.
Sure. So I could answer with kind of how long's a piece of string, because it really does depend. You know, we've built headless implementations on something like WordPress, for example, where we've really customized the solution because it was a content-rich experience. But also we've built, I mean, we've had headless projects that have lasted kind of close to 12 months before, not on Styler, but other things. But I think one of the great things about Styler is, from a development perspective, it does shorten those times. So Noraldine, who's one of our lead developers on the headless side of things, has worked with Styler and other platforms, prefers Styler because it makes his job so much easier. So if we look at kind of, if you want to get a bit technical, you know, React is kind of the, well, now we're moving into Next, but React is really the kind of the technology that a lot of our developers like working with. And so from that level, it's quite apart. But when you then go into Styler and building out these custom components, it makes it so much easier. What's also great about working with Styler is the support that we get. So, you know, it's from our perspective, you know, we're not having to kind of submit a ticket and, you know, wait 12 or 24 hours or there's nothing wrong with that, you know, if the partner that we're working with is of that structure. But I think, you know, Styler is one of those few partners, and we've got a handful of partners that, you know, really do work all hours to kind of get back, you know, to us with the information we need, or even to the merchants, and really nurture that relationship. So I'd probably say, kind of working with Styler, it does reduce the time. You know, in terms of how it looks like a standard e-commerce build up until the development side of things. But then obviously that's where you start looking at you know, implementing the back end with the front end. Again, out of the box with Styler, so we don't need to kind of start hooking up the APIs and creating those connections. Obviously, if we've got some edge cases, then that's something that we can do. But, you know, install the app. If it needs to be customized, customize it. If we need to create custom components, create custom components. I mean, working with Brendan at the moment, you know, we're scoping out some ways of how we can help to improve the way that certain components are managed. So, you know, creating them is fine. It's actually saying, how can we kind of future-proof this to some extent, so that, you know, in 6 months' time, a year's time, 2 years' time, you're not kind of saying this is really difficult to work with, or I wish there was an easy way. You know, sometimes there isn't, but, you know, the great thing about that flexibility is that we can work either internally or with Styler to say, right, how do we kind of make this better? How can we make this custom, you know, component or functionality even easier. And it's leveraging our experience as an agency, but also Stylers as the kind of product owner, to sort of say, look, why don't you approach it from this perspective? So, I think for kind of an average project on Headless, on Styler, you can probably be looking at, again, an average time as you would potentially have on a monolith, maybe a tad bit more, but nothing that's, too scary or going to send you running for the hills.
Yeah, great to hear. I love to hear that. I'm looking to get as well, since you mentioned Brendan, some feedback from you, Brendan. Who are some of the stakeholders involved on your end? How does the process look like? And then Luigi, if you could pitch in as well, kind of from our side once he's done.
Well, we're an SME, so the number of internal stakeholders are pretty small, really. It's myself and the marketing team who would be involved in all the decisions, and we know the pinch points. And I can tell the story about how we moved to Styler in a few moments. But yeah, we're a small team, so there's not that many stakeholders involved. We've been delighted to involve Luigi recently from Kalashok as well.
Perfect. And yeah, Luigi, if you can kind of give it from our perspective, the stakeholders and what the process looks like.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on how kind of an agency is set up and their ways of working, but I think just to attach myself to what Brendan was saying there, the fact that, we're looking at a handful of people, 2, 3, 4 people involved in that project, and the project's going ahead and the project isn't necessarily causing any issues internally, is also testament as to kind of how easy, I guess, working with Kalashok, but also working with Styler is. We're not having to kind of have daily meetings where we're talking about, code changes or how we're going to, overcome an obstacle. It's, being able to keep that momentum because the platform is so intuitive. From an agency perspective, again, pretty standard. So you've got your kind of project management teams, so project manager. That every project starts with a discovery. I think if you have a poor discovery, the project's doomed. So it's really important that discovery is done well, and during that discovery you should also be in a position where you justify kind of that headless thing. So, and I don't want to come across as saying you have to justify in order to kind of go with this. Just saying, make sure that kind of you're on board and you understand exactly the benefits that you're going to be getting, because I think that's another thing, is don't be scared by headless, kind of embrace the advantages and the benefits, but make sure you're aware of the advantages and the benefits, and you've got the internal bandwidth to be able to capitalize on those. But design, and then in terms of development, you can have one developer if you wanted to, as long as they're well versed in React, but 2 or 3 of different levels if you need them, and then it goes in through UAT. So on a project kind of for a company that's doing say 3 to 8 million, I think a fairly small development team working hand in hand with a fairly small client team is perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, so some really great insight. And just not too long, but wanted to get Alex and Philip's opinion on what those projects look like on your ends and how you can help with that process. And then we'll move to the next topic.
Yeah, I think that's for BigCommerce, wasn't it? My Wi-Fi just slightly dropped when I think you asked the question, but as long as I'm still with you now. But ultimately, there's 3 routes we help when it comes to headless. And again, it's all part of where that journey is. So it's out of the box, because we are headless, but we're not headless only. So a lot of people still say to use our front end, which is already decoupled and API first, to get started and then go on to that next phase of your evolution when you are ready. And that could be hybrid headless, we call it, which is using a styler or another PWA or CMS, but still a lot of out-of-the-box components from BigCommerce. That's usually our checkout, for instance. A lot of people don't necessarily want to take the risk of owning the checkout and the PCI and everything that goes with it. So that's, call it that next entry level. We call it hybrid headless at the end of the day. So it's the best of both worlds. And then when you really want to take it to the next step after that, it's full headless. That might be your own checkout, your own experiences, and really, really doing something yourself. So it's the crawl, walk, run mentality. And the final point is back to the integrations. Just try and leverage as many accelerators that BigCommerce and our partners can offer. Whether that is a pre-built accelerator into React, which Luigi mentioned a second ago. We've got pre-built React Next.js accelerators with BigCommerce's checkout already plugged into the APIs. So that can get people started. And then all you've got to do is think about adding someone like a styler on top, and then start building on top of that instead of having to build and connect everything. We've got it with Vue as well, another development framework, and these type of things. So just try to take as much advantage of what our team have been doing, which is all these accelerators to get people started on their way.
Totally agree, and then perfect segue for Philip to add some more from his end from the Styla side.
Sure. So yeah, Styla is really easy to set up. As said, there's an app in the App Store at BigCommerce, so you can just go there, search for Styla, click on install. What we do then is we fetch all the product information through the API, and we built out the entire store catalog with all the category pages and product pages. That's all done automatically, and pretty much after a few seconds, you're up and running on your super fast PWA storefront. But obviously, it's the boilerplate store that we have that we offer to anyone that people then see. So if they want to go into some styling and customization, there's a bit they can do themselves on the platform, like color setting and font selection, etc. And if they want to take it further than that, then we pull in Luigi. We discuss it, and depending on what the customer wants, it can either be something in a matter of hours or days, or something that is maybe a month or 2 months or so as a project timeline. And then they are live with the features they want, and also with the third-party editions. Anything that is on the market can easily be installed in Styla. So Algolia for search, Klaviyo, Clayvu, whatever I mentioned. So those things can then be stitched together either by us directly or when in question, then through Catashock.
Sounds fantastic. I appreciate the feedback addition. But let's move to the next topic. I want to get more into detail with Pitman, the merchant, just so they can share some of their real life experiences. But before I do that, I'll start a poll. This is our last poll for the day. So basically, it's on what factors are holding you back from implementing a headless solution. Again, multi-selection is possible. First one is lack of financial resources to implement a headless solution. Second one is lacking the in-house expertise. Third one is lacking financial or team resources for ongoing maintenance. Fourth one is project complexity. And fifth is uncertain of the benefits. So I'm seeing some answers coming in now. I'll give you 30 seconds or a minute. And basically, we're going to go into the topic of a real life case study with Pitman, and hopefully that will give listeners some insight, some tips, some tricks, some potential insights into the future and what that could look like for them. I'll give
just
you.
While you're running this poll, Ivan, I think just to touch on what Alex and Phil also said, kind of one of the benefits of going on a headless solution being powered by BigCommerce and Styla is that you in essence have your own team of engineers that are not only making sure that, like Alex said, the PCI compliance when you check out, and that's a really big thing. I don't think every merchant is aware of their PCI obligations, payment card industry obligations. So that's all handled by BigCommerce as an agency. I think we've got 2 or 3 implementations where we've customized the checkout, but otherwise we tend not to get too involved in that side of things. So BigCommerce looks after that for you. They have their ecosystem of partners, like Alex said again, the accelerators with React or Next or Vue. But if you've got any problems with your platform, you've got that support 24/7. If you then look at the front end, you've got a company that is investing in a product that's constantly being improved and is evolving, and so you're benefiting on both sides from not just a system that's being constantly improved and giving you a competitive advantage because you're making the most of that functionality, but also making sure that if there are any issues, if you've got any problems or any questions, you've got that tech support when you go for like an open source solution, maybe directly with an agency. You've got to make sure that you've got the backup to be able to say, if I have a problem on a Friday night at 9 o'clock, which has happened to some merchants, and we can kind of leverage and find we've got a global team. so we can leverage that. But we also can leverage BigCommerce if we need to kind of get in touch within the support engineers. And with open source you don't always get that, so that's one key consideration. Isn't necessarily kind of how much does it cost, or maybe BigCommerce costs more than kind of having an open source solution, but actually what's the opportunity cost if things go down and you're not able to get back online as quick as possible, or you've got to keep adding patches and so on. So really leverage kind of your vendors from a SaaS perspective, because they're going to make sure that your the lights are on and you're going to keep selling day or night.
Totally agree. And we can see the results from the poll here. So looks like it was split between lacking the in-house expertise and project complexity. Then runners up are lack of financial resources and lacking financial or team resources, and then uncertain of benefits. So I guess the outcome of that is at least we've made you aware of the benefits if you weren't aware of them already. So let's jump into it. Brendan, I wanted to hear a little bit more from you on what motivated you to move to Headless.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. I suppose our particular journey to Headless started way back in 2019 when we learned our then existing website, which was on Magento 1.9, that platform was becoming end of life. I'm sure there's loads of other merchants out there who are in the same position, and it may still be in the same position. So we looked at a few different platforms at the time, and we chose BigCommerce. So our new UK website went live on BigCommerce around, I think, October 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. But our business actually grew quite rapidly during the pandemic. And we were adding higher value buys for projects like cycle lane infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, street furniture, mainly surrounding, opening up public spaces for active travel and for accessibility, etc. So your typical kind of e-commerce website didn't necessarily match the buyer journey of our target customer. Because our BigCommerce site was quite product listing oriented, it's kind of a traditional e-commerce website. It was ideal for customers who knew what they wanted to buy and if they were ready to buy, but we wanted to kind of help our customer on their particular buyer journey. So we decided to focus more on lead generation and interacting with our customers earlier on their buyer journey rather than just at checkout. As I say, for these higher value ranges for more B2B customers. So that's how we met Styla, and that's how we've come to our existing site. And our existing site, I suppose, is a hybrid of e-commerce and lead gen. As Alex mentioned, I suppose the advantage of BigCommerce is that it does facilitate us. It does allow us to deploy a headless system with the backup of that really good, strong BigCommerce catalog management system, and to be able to manage prices. And indeed, as Alex mentioned a few times there, and Luigi, we still use the BigCommerce checkout, which is really strong. But as I say, the main benefit for us that we weren't tied down to the BigCommerce content management system. There's been, I suppose, a lot of technical talk there about PWAs and APIs. And for me as a business owner, and other merchants out there, really, we just want to sell product. We want to help our customer and interact with them on the buyer journey. So we love how quickly and easily it is for us to roll out new pages. Luigi used the word there earlier on, shoehorn. We don't have to shoehorn our content now in through the BigCommerce system. We have the flexibility and indeed the agility to deploy great content really quickly.
Fantastic. And just to kind of tie into that, I think, Alex, I wanted you to just add, why does BigCommerce and when do you recommend partners like Styla to merchants? So a case like Pitman or someone else, but just wanted to get that insight from you, and then we'll move to a question for Phil, Brendan, and we'll wrap it up shortly.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the kind of things we've all been speaking about earlier, especially that criteria, right? The budget, the skills, the true reason why, right? Instead of the buzzword. And Brendan had said it perfectly just a second ago, right? I think the point about when a customer knows what they want and they will just want to find a product, select it, maybe create a bundle and check out, find, that's where we may, dare I say, not necessarily need a styler. But when you're in Brendan's case, user experience, guiding that customer, journeys, all the educational branding bit, that's where people like a styler would get recommended. And especially when styler are a great low TCO model, and all importantly, they want more than just a headless site. It's the PWA mobile experience on top of the web experience as well. So they're all the kind of things. So Brendan brought it to life very nicely there.
Yeah, perfect tie-in. Thank you. From Luigi, was looking to get some more insight on how BigCommerce's open SaaS supports projects like this. I know we've touched on it before, but essentially, if you can elaborate a little bit more on that, and we'll tie that section up.
Sure. I mean, we rely heavily on the APIs. I'd probably say that kind of, Web 2.0 piece of it. So the APIs, and now I think we're on version 3 for a lot of the endpoints on BigCommerce, but also where BigCommerce supports us is through kind of things like GraphQL as well. So we can really create kind of, complex customer journeys. We work a lot with B2B, as you know, and obviously, Brendan being one of our merchants in the B2B space. And whilst there is kind of a shift more towards a B2C-esque experience, because those B2B buyers are used to buying online now and for personal use, it's also how we're making sure that the information that needs to be displayed, the complexities, the product data, all of that is being passed through to the front end. So, and I'm obviously well versed in BigCommerce, but I speak to other industry peers and merchants, and not all platforms are made the same. So they may offer you an API. It's the same as kind of saying, my car's got an engine. It doesn't mean that the engine of a Ferrari is comparable to the engine of a Ford, and that's really what you need to look at. So if you are considering headless, or even if you're considering kind of omni-channel, so you're looking at just plugging your e-com system into something else, but certainly kind of on a headless perspective, what you don't want to do is invest in a PWA and then find that your APIs are actually slowing you down, because the term "you're only as strong as your weakest link" has never been truer, because there's no point having a really fast engine but you've got square wheels, because you're just going to go nowhere. Styler are very proud, rightly so, of the fact that when their sites launch, if you do like a Google page speed insights test, you've got 4 green lights. Obviously, puts pressure on us as an agency to make sure that we develop in a way where when we deliver, we have those 4 green lights. But that's the standard. BigCommerce Cornerstone as well can have those 4 green lights. But then when you start developing, the framework is different. You can't expect the PWA performance on BigCommerce. But I would probably say, if you are considering headless, which is a really exciting thing to do, and I think is a really good time to consider it, just make sure you do your research. One of the great things that BigCommerce brings to the table, again, I'm not being biased, this is just the truth, is that you don't have this glass ceiling, because we get merchants that migrate from one e-commerce platform to BigCommerce, because when they get to about 5-6 million, they start creaking at the seams. And you don't have that with BigCommerce. You can start off, with BigCommerce, paying, a few hundred, couple of thousand a month on monolith, and then you want to make that move to headless. You just, you get in contact with someone at Styler, and they can be added on. You're not having to re-platform and retrain and rescope and find new agencies and so on. So I think that's a really good benefit. If you're saying I'm not ready yet, but I'd like to go headless, start laying down the groundwork by looking at the e-commerce platform that's going to be there for you in 2 years' time, or 1 year's time. What I'd also say from a styler perspective, though, is it's not going to break your bank. As Alex also said, the total cost of ownership, TCO, on BigCommerce is low, but it's also very low on well, not very low is probably the wrong word, but it's not what you think maybe on styler. You can grow with that platform as well. So you've really got that flexibility as a merchant, especially in a time when people are, kind of evaluating their CapEx budgets or their monthly budgets, but also want to keep up, or if not lead, the trend in their industry.
Yeah. Agreed. Last question just for Brendan. If you can share some details on improvements you've seen in your store, and then we'll take some frequently asked questions from the audience. Hope it's okay if we go a couple minutes over for everyone.
Well, I think the headline for the whole webinar should be the speed improvements that we've seen with Styler. I think before we went with Styler, we were on Google Page Insights, the score was like mid-20s out of 100. And then when we went to Styler, it was stunning. It was like 90 plus out of 100 on Google Page Insights. So that was, alone, that was worth it. We love the support we get from Kalashok and from Styler. While the support from BigCommerce directly, we couldn't particularly fault it, but it's that ticketing system. We always got responses, but with Styler and Kalashok, it's a personalized experience. There's no tickets. It's emailing people directly. We're on a first name basis with everybody. Yeah, and I suppose the last thing I want to say is it's the content. We're not held back in publishing great content. Really good content helps the buyer. It helps SEO. It helps our conversion. It helps UX, the customer experience. And we've got such flexibility on that. We can really talk to our customers.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brendan. Just to tie into that question from the audience, and I think this is perfect. This is one from Daniela. She said, performance improvements like speed is one of the benefits we're hoping for when going headless. So how can Styler improve speed?
Yeah, I think that's for me to answer probably. I really appreciate what Brendan said, and that's precisely how we would like to get headless to the market. We don't want the whole complexity of a headless setup to be in the minds of our customers. They should sit into the car, set themselves into the car in the driver's seat, and then get going and create beautiful content on their websites. But what's happening in the back end is quite a lot of work. So there's a whole system of so-called pre-rendering, in which we take static snapshots of websites that are rendered on a virtual server, a virtual browser, and then those snapshots are being delivered to a content delivery network. And this is the main exchange. When somebody opens a website, there's no rendering, there's no data fetching, no waiting for server responses. It's just a static HTML website that's being pushed out of the CDN. Sorry if I get too technical here, but it's really a huge infrastructural development that we've done at Styler to really get the speed up, and it's pretty much the fastest that you can have. It's like back in the days we had a Dreamweaver, maybe the old guys among us remember, where you could just create these static websites. That's pretty much what we end up at Styler. We create from the whole editing, from changes that we receive from the BigCommerce store. We create these static websites that are very much reduced in JavaScript, where we throw everything out, image sizes that are not necessary. So we render various versions of the sites for various devices, and then we push them into the CDN, and the CDN is the one that delivers the site, which also, by the way, leads to the sites having a pretty much 100% uptime, because they are Styler can go down, BigCommerce can go down, but as long as the CDN is still up, the site will be up. Yeah, obviously super fast, driving conversion rates, basket values, all the beautiful things that the merchant wants to see. And you can use it in offline mode even. So if you've visited a site, you can go back to it, you can surf through everything. Great benefit of the PWA there as well, that you can serve it in offline mode or bad connectivity. So those are the benefits that come through the whole pre-render. It's also called Jamstack. That's an architecture type that we implemented in Styler in the backend, which is nothing that Brendan has to worry about. He just can work with the site and create beautiful content, but there's a lot of things happening in the backend, just so you know.
Lovely. Yeah, love the details. Danielle, I hope that's helped. We'll be following up after the webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to let us know and we'll put you in touch with Philip and his team to help out. But I want to thank everyone. Brendan, it's been a pleasure. Philip, Alex, Luigi, thanks for having this great chat. I hope there was a lot of great insight for all the listeners. I definitely learned a lot and enjoyed it. So hope everyone has a lovely day. You'll be getting the webinar's link as a follow-up, the recording, and we'll be in touch more soon.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.